right, we should be live. Can you call the meeting to order? Start from the beginning.
I'd like to call the meeting of the Governance and Policy, or Policy and Governance Committee meeting to order at 5:49 p.m. Are there any public comments?
We have not received any public comments for the Policy and Governance Committee. If anyone from the public wishes to make a public comment, they are asked to send an email to publiccomment@albanypubliclibrary.org or leave a voicemail at 518-290-6905. You're asked to identify your name and your address, and public comments will be read during designated times. Thank you.
Bob, thank you for taking the time to review the policies we looked at last week. Can you share how we could make them stronger and more legally enforceable?
Which one would you like to start with?
Oh, how about the travel?
Well, do you want to go down the list as it is on the agenda?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I don't have the agenda up because I'm on one screen and I can't pull up.
Policy?
That's the art and exhibition policy.
Give me 1 second.
There was some changes.
Share my screen as soon as I can get my mouse to cooperate.
Today was my first day back from a week on vacation, and I ran late coming home, so I really apologize to everyone because their time is valuable.
Okay, so the screen that's showing now is the markup that I sent back to staff. Scott, Melanie, and I had a conversation earlier today to just, go over a couple of these things, make sure I understood where things were. So right here in number 3, that's a minor change. I think that's just a stylistic issue. The more substantive issue on this art exhibition policy is that there are 2 forms that are accompanying it. One is a form for art submission. And I have looked at that form and really have no comments at all on that. It seems fine. But for the comment that's here on the art policy, I don't have any concern. Where my concern arose was on the reconsideration form. And in speaking to Scott and Melanie, they said what the committee was doing there was basically just tracking a process that is in place with respect to library materials, which I think there's wisdom in doing that and being consistent. But my reaction to both the form and the process is that my sense is that you're enabling the process and making it easier for people to request one of these reconsiderations. Scott's perspective was generally that once there was a form and you handed a form to people, that they often would step back and not want to proceed. So as a matter of policy, I defer to the committee on that. However, if we're going to have a reconsideration request form, then I think the policy needs to be significantly changed to provide for a reconsideration process. What happens if we get one of these requests? Where does that request go? What entity is going to hear that request and adjudicate it? What standard do they apply? Things of that nature. The other thing I noticed on the art reconsideration form itself is that it asked a question about, or several questions about whether or not the person was doing this on behalf of an organization. And I have some hesitancy about a question like that, because it is going to provide you with information without question, but it may provide you with information that may not be helpful to your analysis, or worse, may be harder for whatever entity that's making these decisions to be unbiased about the decision. So I would suggest, I think, taking it out. Now, Scott did think that that came from a model elsewhere. And if it does, we can certainly pursue that and figure out why the model would have that. But, you know, what I'm concerned about is that assuming the person is acting on behalf of an organization, and assuming it's an organization that may not be one that the library aligns itself with, and you then make a decision contrary to that organization, you've injected into the process this idea of, well, why did you make the decision? Because of the organization or because of the substance of what was being talked about? So, you know, I'm not sure what good comes from that. And I think that's something for the committee to consider. But the big issue is, if we're going to have this process, we've got to actually have a process and make reference to it, which doesn't exist right now.
The reason I suggested having a reconsideration, Ernie, stop. Ugh.
Sarah, it seems that we've lost you.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. The reason I suggested having a reconsideration policy is because I sit on the Freedom to Read Foundation. And what I've been seeing is that when something is challenged, a patron being banned, a work or a program, without having a reconsideration policy, they don't do as well in court.
Well, you don't have a reconsideration policy. That's the problem. All you have is a form.
Okay.
And that's the exact concern that I'm raising, is that right now, this policy doesn't make any reference at all to reconsideration. It only has a form. And so if we are going to go down the road of having a form and a procedure, then we actually have to lay it out.
Okay, we can do that.
So the things that you would need to have are process. The form would be part of the process.
Mm-hmm.
Decision maker, standard for making the decision. I don't know why that would probably, I assume that would just be the board. I don't know why you'd want, well, I shouldn't say that. Maybe you'd want the staff to take a first crack at it. But anyway, the long and short of it is all of that needs to get laid out and I think it would be appropriate in a section of the art exhibition policy.
Okay, we can do that. And the reason, again, I wanted or suggested this is because we're getting people from the public. We're encouraging the public to request to submit their artwork. And I thought that could get dicey, as opposed to when APL was able to vet it before putting it up. Or if we decide not to highlight an artist, they might want to know why. And they might want it reconsidered.
I think that's a different.
Well, that's a different issue, because this policy, this form doesn't deal with that. It only deals with the taking it down aspect of things.
Okay, so we need to work on this a little bit more. Okay. Brigitte, any thoughts? Is it worth going in that direction?
Yeah, like, yeah, we needed a policy to say why it wasn't accepted. It's just a form, as Bob said. So we laid out what we need in the policy, the reconsideration. if they have recourse of why their artwork or exhibit wasn't accepted.
Can I speak up? Because I believe there's a confusion about the policies right now. We had the request for reconsideration, that is to reconsider a piece that is already hung. So that's somebody finds it objectionable and wants a piece that we already have hung in the library taken down. And then there's the separate form that's the request to exhibit. And so what Bob is saying, if for the first, if we do have a request for reconsideration form to take a piece down, we need a fully fleshed out policy in order to state what the process will be to go through should somebody have an objection to a piece of art. Then on the other side, if we've already stated in the art exhibition policy, we're already laying out how the pieces will be considered.
Well, are you? I think that
Then we need to.
I think you may need a little bit more if you're talking about having somebody make a decision about what goes in as well. That request form is the thing that triggers that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And then the I guess maybe it would be in this addendum A, but I don't know what that is.
Okay.
So, is addendum A intended to be the form itself?
Yes.
Okay. So there's no guidelines in that document per se. It's just
our policy just state that how we've used the art exhibition policy in the past. The artwork must meet standards for art exhibited in a public space, focusing on themes that have a broad appeal to diverse and intergenerational audiences.
Yeah.
And
So then,
we'll make selections with a priority to artists who live, work, or are closely related to the capital region.
so then the vetting that's referred to in 3 is in respect to number 1 and number 2.
Yes.
Okay. And so this art exhibition committee is going to be the one that does that.
Or the branch management staff. That's how we have it stated in the.
So for what it's worth, Mel, you may remember this because I think you and I were scratching our heads before. At one point, there was a much longer version of this policy that was kicked around that we streamlined quite a bit down to this. We don't remember exactly what we took out of it, but it might actually be some of the stuff we're talking about now.
Well, I think before the issue that we had before is we actually, when the art APL program was developed initially, and that was prior to my time, there was an actual art exhibition committee made up of board members and members of the art community in the capital region that weren't tied to the library. However, once we entered into the agreement with Alpaca, we changed everything because with that agreement, their people, their individuals at Alpaca were acting as that art exhibition committee. They were our
that does somewhat sound familiar. I remember a longer version of this policy at one point.
But I think that's why we cut it down.
You might want to look at that because it may have some of the stuff that we're talking about adding back in now. I don't think I have it, but I can go looking.
Jerry, do you have any questions or comments?
It just sounds like what Bob is saying is I definitely agree with him and Brigitte. But if there was a previous policy that quite a bit was taken out of, I think now there needs to be a little bit of backtrack to see what was actually taken out. We might be a little bit redundant, but
we just may save us some effort if we can find it.
Okay. Sounds like a plan. So I'm suggesting that this isn't quite ready for prime time, and we'll work on it and think about sharing it at the November meeting. Are we agreed?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, fabulous. Thank you, ladies.
I will try to see if I can find that old one in my files.
Thank you. Can we get the next policy up, please?
Don't know why my mouse is having issues going between screens. 1 second.
First aid.
Yep. I'm having just a mouse issue. It wasn't going to my second screen. You see it now?
Yes.
So this policy was fine, other than the comment at the very bottom. We talked a little bit to Scott, Melanie, and I spoke today, and they were trying to reconvey to me what the committee's thoughts were there with respect to that comment. And I'm not sure we got to clarity on it. So maybe we can start with just what are you guys trying to accomplish with respect to the possible release form?
We wanted people, if they were even injured with a minor injury, to fill out a form, just to have it on record. And I think, Jerry, am I saying this, remembering it correctly, that if they refused it, do we need to have a form why they didn't want to fill out a form? We might be getting too form. We just wanted documentation.
Well, yeah, just
protect the staff.
documentation. If someone didn't want to fill out a form, I doubt that they're going to want to fill out a reason why they don't want to fill out the form. So maybe just a spot where the employee just says, hey, patron declined to fill out incident report. This is a summary of what happened, X, Y, and Z.
So is that different in your minds than the normal incident report process that staff does anytime an incident like this occurs?
I think they were mentioning there was a time period that, in reference to the incident report, that it needed to be filled out by Brigitte. Am I correct on that? We were going back and forth in reference to there should be a certain time period of 48 hours or what have you that the incident report had to be done in.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Right. You're correct. Right. Right. That's what we were discussing, that it had to be completed within the 48 hours of the incident.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense to me. Do you see that as a different form than the one that is mentioned down below? I don't think it's practical or frankly going to be of a whole lot of legal value in a lot of cases for us to ask a patron who's been injured to give us a release. First, I think most of them will tell you to go pound sand. I think those who might give you one and say, oh, no, I'm fine, could theoretically go away and have the injury turn into something more severe and then come back, in which case I'm not sure how much value a release is really going to have. But I think the idea of ensuring that staff completes a record of the incident, and to the extent that we can add a place for the staff member to note that the person refused treatment or something like that, I think that's a good idea.
Right. Right. I think that's what we were alluding to, or our thought process. If the person, as you just mentioned, came back 6 months later and said, it turned into something other than what I thought, and I've been having chronic back pain for 6 months when I fell and I thought I was all right, but I'm not, and now I'm still in the library. So
yeah, and that is like that's the claim, right? That's the ones we deal with. But you have insurance for it. You've got an insurance company that's going to deal with that as it goes forward. I think the most important thing is that we're creating a record of those incidents that we have knowledge of.
Is 48 hours too long?
I mean, I think you're doing it immediately, aren't you, Scott?
Well, so that's the issue. That's what got brought up, is the fact that sometimes we've been allowing, say somebody falls while we're closing the building. If they fall while we're closing the building on a Friday, sometimes that person doesn't fill out the incident report until Monday. But we can change that procedure.
I mean, boy, I wouldn't think that's a good idea, only because what if they forget?
No, I agree. I don't like and this kind of gives us the ability to say, hey, this is not appropriate. The incident report needs to be filled out right away and leave it at that. This really gives us a reason to fill out, to have the process worked out in a way that the managers are empowered to tell the staff they have to do it as soon as they can.
Would that generate a union thing, Scott?
Nowhere in the contract is incident reports even mentioned.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, to the extent that it raises an issue, Sarah, the issue would be, you have to pay us for the time, and of course that's true. If we require somebody to stay beyond the end of their shift, it's going to trigger overtime or whatever. But I think we need to get the form done.
I agree. So 2 hours of incident?
You're talking about the time frame? I would just say immediately.
Okay.
Or contemporaneous with, or something like that.
Okay.
Or maybe even by the end of their shift. I mean, depending on like what's going on, because they shouldn't leave without it being done. I think that's really what we're getting at here, right?
Yeah.
So maybe by the end of the day of the incident.
I mean, but wouldn't it be the end of their shifts? You know what I mean? Because if you're not going to be, you want to go home without it. It's not like you're going to go home and then come back, right?
Yeah, sometimes that happens, but I mean, I think this would be good to go back and just say, listen, this needs to be filled out right away.
Okay.
But to give it a statement in the policy, how would we want to word that? For any injury occurring on premises, an incident report. Well, this is first aid, so yeah. So for any injury occurring on premises, an incident report must be completed immediately after the incident,
or by the end of the shift. Immediately or by the end of the shift.
I would say immediately when it's still fresh in your mind.
I am one who's a firm believer that if you have to fill out an incident report, it should be done right away.
I mean, that does stand to reason.
That's how you're taught to do it in the security field.
Okay. And we'll remove the last red line at the bottom. Agreed, ladies?
Yes.
Okay. And I guess this is ready to go to the board.
Yeah, the only other thing that was mentioned about this is there was going to be an addendum that lists the contents of the first aid kit, and in connection with that question.
Yeah. Yes. 1 second. We were going to include the first aid kit supplies and combine them into one document, so as an addendum to this document.
And in connection with that, the question arose of, can we put naloxone in the first aid kits if not every person that has access to that first aid kit is trained? And I was trying to get a clear answer to that today, because we've got some stuff that changed, boy, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago, that brought libraries into the world of naloxone administration. And so it is now clear
Bless you.
Bless you.
Thank you.
that naloxone can be stored in a library and accessible to trained staff members. But what it's not clear is whether or not it can be put in a first aid kit. So when I went looking for that, what I found on the SED website, actually, do you mind if I share for a second? Mel?
There you go.
Let's see if I can do this. I actually found something that was pretty compelling. So this is SED's guidance on storage of naloxone in public libraries. And if you read it, it really does suggest that it cannot be easily accessible. It has to be available only to trained people.
Okay, so we could just leave it off then, our first aid kit supplies.
Yeah. Or make a reference that naloxone is also present in the library, but is being stored for accessibility only by trained staff members. So I'm going to just see, I'm going to put this up in the chat so people can look at it later.
Thank you.
How often, Scott, do staff have access to training?
I mean, we typically do it at all staff. So it would be an annual thing. I mean, we could do it twice a year, or we could do it both at all staff training day and staff development day. So,
Pre-pandemic, I
that could
believe
be-
we did it every 6 months.
Yeah.
But it was only shortly before the pandemic that this went into effect and made off. I think they were only, this was what, 2018, you said?
I don't know if I have that date off the top of my head.
But it was,
That's about right. Let me see if I can tell you.
I think we did 4 trainings prior to the pandemic.
So this is DLD's thing. This was last updated in August of 2019. So it's before then.
I believe what we did is we did one at all staff, and then we did one 6 months later for staff who were hired in the interim. And it was optional. We didn't require staff to.
Yeah, it's not a mandatory thing. It's if you want to.
So how would we write that in the policy? Or
Well, in this particular policy, I think you'd simply write in the list that Melanie had up on the screen that I made her take down. I'm sorry. Maybe you just had a footnote that says, in addition to these first aid supplies, naloxone is available at the library for administration by trained staff members. And then just state where it's stored or something like that.
okay.
If we traditionally have stored it with our first aid kits, would that not be available anymore? We would have to
I
store it
mean, if you
separately?
read that guidance that I had up, it says it has to be locked in a store, it has to be stored in a locked area that is only accessible to trained individuals.
So then it would not be stored in the first aid
No.
supplies.
I would just.
No,
leave
that
it
was a
off.
little bit of my concern to have it once we talked about it.
Well, that makes it easier.
Now, there's nothing to say you can't have the first aid kit locked up in the same place. It's just it won't be as accessible.
I think as a staff would rather have it accessible.
Yeah, I mean, the need for the need for Band-Aids and things of that nature is much higher than the need for Narcan.
Well, that's good. Thankfully.
All right. So given our new knowledge, it's okay to add this to the incident report?
No, this
Not
would
the
be on
incident report, the
first
The
aid
first
policy.
aid.
the first aid.
One.
So this can go to the board?
Was there anything made mention in reference to how often this first aid was stocked with supplies or something? Was that in the
Yeah.
other policy?
So 1 second. Right here, each kit is replenished by ordering a replacement kit as needed. Each kit handles a minimum of 25 people and conforms to ANSI standards.
I think that as needed needs a pure paragraph, or not paragraph, a period.
Thank
And then maybe the kits, there you go.
There you go.
And then I just had a question as far as the Narcan is, you said the staff. So should it be two staff members that are trained on duty, or one that is trained in supplying, or per branch? At least one person knows how to use it that's on duty at any given time?
I think that's
Yeah.
going to create some real issues for you because you can't compel people to be trained
Correct.
to administer it.
So you just
Well, I shouldn't say. I think maybe you could, but that you'd probably have to negotiate with the union.
Yep.
Right now, it's basically if staff members want to be trained and want to be good Samaritans, they can be. That's how I read the library provision of the law. So I'd be a little cautious in putting an obligation on staff to be trained or to administer. It also may create a duty on the part of the library that you don't want to have.
Okay.
Thank you.
They can always call EMS. Luckily, we live within the city and the response times are generally pretty good. And my understanding is APD is carrying it too. It's not just Albany Fire that has it.
Okay. Then it's really not necessary that we carry it if you're going to call EMS or the fire department. So why have it?
I almost agree. My concern was that this became very popular in libraries.
Yeah, the library community fought to get the statute in place.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, if it's a choice for the staff, like you said, to be either a good Samaritan or not, there's no legal obligation that they have to. We're called EMS, and we'll just wait for EMS.
I can
the
one time.
The other thing.
Sorry.
I was just gonna say the one time we did use it was in conjunction with the EMS. They didn't have enough in there. They had been running low and they only had one dose. And so we were able to help provide the second dose.
And even individuals in recovery are now given training and giving Narcan. The time that I was present for it, it was the young lady who was probably waiting for the needle outside the bathroom, but she was actually the person who had the Narcan and gave it to the individual. The only concerns that I hear, and I think are a valid concern, is that if someone is to overdose in the bathroom, it may take some time to notice that they have overdosed. And therefore, even if you call EMTs, even with their pretty remarkable response time, I mean, we're down the street. Most of our libraries are in visual distance or walking distance from a firehouse. The problem is if you're at a fire, which is what happened the day I was there for it, was the individual was probably there longer. You know what I mean?
Right.
They overdosed. It was a period of time before the person they were with finally got somebody, the staff members, then the staff members. So having it on hand is probably good only because if someone's shooting up by themselves, there's no way to know that they've overdosed in the
Right.
bathrooms. So I'm not opposed to having it in the bathrooms. I'm a little concerned with when we roll it into our general operations. So in other words, incorporating it into a policy now almost makes it as if it is now a responsibility of ours. I would be concerned that EMTs would expect it to be in the building, so they wouldn't bring it themselves. I would be a little afraid, and I believe this is out there in the community, that individuals would say shooting up in the libraries a little more safe because they do have Narcan there if you overdose. So again, it's that
Right.
good, be trying to be a good person and good community and good organization. That means you slowly over time begin to take on other organizations' responsibilities.
Okay. Thank you.
So our consensus is not to include Narcan in this policy.
But I
And-
am,
In the first aid supplies.
yeah, I think
Okay.
it should be treated separately. I think we should make it available for our staff and make our staff aware of the Good Samaritan law and provide training, but I don't think we should incorporate it into our policy. But what I do like is, I'm Ray's questioning of how often we do it. I'm wondering, and Bob, I could be totally wrong in this. Do we incorporate into the policy a time frame in which the first aid kits are checked? Because my concern is there's an emergency, someone gives all the supplies out, and it's their high level of anxiety. They don't think to report that all the supplies got used. And then in another emergent situation that might be a couple days later, the person goes to the first aid supply and it's empty.
Or they frankly do report it and nobody immediately goes to refill. Add to that, the other thing, can you scroll down, please, Mel? The other thing I pointed out is you've got at least, there's a handful of things on this list that actually have expiry dates. So, you should be checking for that too. Antibiotic ointment, burn ointment, gauze, those things are all going to have expiry dates for sterilization.
So it seems like there needs to be some type of, do you guys have a standard operating procedure in place already in reference to whose responsibility it is to check it, like managers or
No, that's why I think it's a really great idea.
I believe with the safety committee, we have it's unofficially the facilities manager checks them once a year when we do all of our certifications.
But I think it might be better just with the safety committee and how they change their focus so often. I really think something needs to be codified and there needs to be assigned responsibility for who's responsible for this stuff and how often we check it.
What if it were the branch manager once on every day on the first of the month, or every month on the first of the month?
Or the branch manager and/or designatee. So if it's designatee, they don't have to worry about it, but they're responsible for it, but they don't have to necessarily do it.
But wouldn't that be the branch manager who delegates that out?
Yes, absolutely. That's why it would be branch manager or designatee. So it's just leaving the responsibility on the branch manager, but giving them the ability to say to the one of the clerks or somebody else, hey, one of your responsibilities is to check the first of every week, check on the first aid kit.
And shouldn't it be refilled after it's used each time?
That would be the intent.
But again, you just never know. Somebody might grab a couple Band-Aids, someone might grab the burn gel, and just in an emergency situation, you don't think, and then 3 months later, someone goes, the same situation happens. I think, John Ray, I think that's what you're kind of trying to get at, where it's like, these need to be checked, because you never know when people are grabbing stuff from it.
Absolutely. I mean, if it's something that, we give these things out in emergency, it's not something that's always such a big deal. If someone needs a Band-Aid here and there, or, whatever it is, these things do run low. So checking them more frequently and just ensuring. I mean, it's ideal that we would replenish them as they're being used, but that's not typically, what happens in an everyday, situation,
Kids crying, Band-Aids go flying everywhere. Stuff gets lost.
So, okay, let's just add that it's checked by the branch manager or designee at the first of every month.
As Rebecca had alluded to, like an audit form checkoff, like a inventory checklist. So like when you do take things out, do you sign them out? Like I took a Band-Aid on 10-4 and initials, and so I used 3 or whatever, and so how many you have left and what you have to order for the next month or day or whatever, how you're going to replenish it. I mean,
there probably should be a list of, here are the items that are in this pack, and whether or not they need to be replenished.
Okay, so are we talking about just a list of, let's say, just for example, 10 Band-Aids, 10, gauze pads, 10 alcohol pads? Or are you saying, it sounds like Brigitte was saying, whenever you use it, you're signing off that you're taking something out. To me, that seems like that might be a little bit more of a paperwork and a job that needs to happen.
Yeah, I think you're right, Jerry. That's just going to drive people crazy.
Oh, if it's in the list, if it's in the first aid kit, I mean, that's how we do at housing. If it's in the first aid kit with it, and you just sign off. I mean, it's not like rocket science or anything like that. Number of pages, just every time you take one, so that at least the branch
in the first aid kit. You're saying storing it in the first aid kit.
Yes, I'm saying.
How big is the first aid kit? They're
just a box.
A box, like a bread box.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, big enough to hold a defibrillator and, a drug box and an air splint,
But I mean, there's not like there's a lot of staff either that we don't have 50 people on a shift, and it could be a whole bunch of people who's going in and out of this first aid kit, right? There's only a couple people on staff at one given time.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of inventory more so than signing items out.
When do they usually do an inventory of certain items at a certain time in the month, or?
As I stated, it's usually done. This is the facilities manager usually has one of the facilities personnel check the first aid kits. Probably not this often, probably once a year when we do all of our emergency testing.
But a reference to something that they do monthly. Is there anything that we can attach this with to coincide? That way it wouldn't be such a task on the branch manager or whoever they delegate it out to. Is there anything that they do monthly, for example, that we could kind of, hey, attach this on? So it's not that big to do.
Could be like, I don't know how many times do you service your fire extinguishers? Could it be, how many times do you?
That's annually.
Oh, annually. Oh.
I'm just going to speak up to Becky just messaged me, and I think this is a good example. When she was at Lowe's, they used to do a monthly first aid kit inventory audit. which should be done monthly, and the branch manager can hold audit forms. This is what facilities already does for some cleaning items. So this really, I like the idea of an audit list where it's like you check you go through the first aid kit and you go, okay, 15 Band-Aids, we're down 5 Band-Aids. We need to get more Band-Aids. 15 pieces of gauze, 15 items for burn sobs or whatever it is. I think that's a good idea, just for once a month to go through with an audit list and go, hey, you know what? We need an extra pack of Band-Aids. I don't think we use these kits so much that we run into these situations where we never run into a situation, or it's not often that we run into a situation where we burn through the entire kit. So I do think an audit list every month will be a good way just to make sure we have the adequate supplies.
Okay, that works. It works for me. Works for you,
That's
Brigitte?
That's good for me.
The way I
Sheree?
worded it is that, does that work for everybody? Each kit is checked by the branch manager or a designee on the first of every month, and orders for replenishments are submitted to the facilities manager.
Yep.
Yes.
Sounds good.
Okay. Are we comfortable with this?
Oh, I'm sorry
to go
about that.
forward?
My whole thing was going crazy for a second. Yes, I agree. Sorry.
Okay. I think we have another policy to bring to the board this month.
Does that work for you, Bob? I thought you had a comment. Okay.
I just wanted to let you know that I've got about 10 minutes before I've got to cut out.
Okay.
So if you want me to hit the travel and meal issues real quick.
Yes, please.
No major issues here. I think, well, Mel, you're going to throw it up?
I'm working on it. Sorry, home setup. Not cooperating. Don't know why. Sorry. There it is.
Okay.
Bob, you don't need to go because there's no Blue Jays game tonight.
I didn't hear you, but I'm sorry. There's somebody vacuuming out here. That was a Blue Jays joke. It's too soon.
I'm a Mets fan. It's never too soon.
That's true.
So, let's see. Okay. So, I had made a couple comments. First was we were using this phrase active board members. And not only is it too many words, but I just think the word that we should use is trustees. Employees or trustees incurred during their work. So I made that change throughout. There is a point here, you're scrolling too quick now. There's a point here about the executive director approving expenditures, but I did add that the board president in the case of trustees should be the one signing off just because of we don't want to make employees nervous about approving a trustee's expenditure. And then there was a reference down below to the standard, and Mel has updated it. I had raised the question of there was just a reference to governmental rates, and I didn't think it was clear. It turns out that what we were trying to describe is the controller's per diem rates, which, as it turns out in New York, are actually the U.S. Governmental Service Administration's per diem rates. So whether we say controllers per diem rates, which is what Mel's put in and I think is fine, or established GSA rates, that's fine too. Both the controller and the GSA have clear websites on how those rates work, and it's basically by geography. So with that, I didn't have any other changes on this.
Okay.
You actually
Thank
had the statement about the travel for non-employees.
Oh, there was the question about that.
Yep.
So I think that there was just some confusion as to the way that was written. Basically, it's a statement saying that the library is not going to pay the costs for family members that are traveling with an employee unless there's a legitimate library purpose for that. And there's not going to be too many times that there even could be. But for example, I guess if a trustee or a staff member were getting a prestigious award and the spouse was invited to come, perhaps in that case, the Board of Trustees might authorize the travel expense or something like that. But it would be a very rare circumstance. We did change that a bona fide library purpose for attending the event.
Okay. Fabulous. Brigitte Jarret, are we comfortable with this?
Yes.
Melanie,
Yep.
did you get that company to the library as a bona fide library purpose for attending the event?
That's what I was just getting ready to ask you.
And I missed it when we included board trustees. Right? I'm trying to zoom in here.
I missed what you said there,
I
Jerry.
think Sarah, Sarah, I think when you were mentioning last time about the travel for board trustees as well, that I kind of zoomed in here.
Yeah, we did
Bob
include
addressed
that.
it. And we've become, and he made it a better term than what we had put down. So this is ready to go to the board.
Pardon me. And then the only other thing that I looked at for you this month, unsuccessfully, is staff had teed up the hazardous materials policy. And Adam has done a very significant rewrite on it, which is great, except that I need to now go back and line by line it against the OSHA reg and just make sure that we haven't taken too much out. What he's done is great in that it's a much more streamlined policy, but this is the stuff that technicality is made from. So I definitely need to do that for you before next month. And Scott, I went to try and figure out if I could come up with the source that Dan had used. It might have actually been before you were here, because it wasn't in my current filing system. So that's 2016. But we definitely purchased a service at Dan's request to generate this policy, and I just couldn't put my hands on what it was.
I do recall the product, so it can't be too much before Scott. But I don't know where it would have been on. It was on his computer only.
Yeah, I was going to say it's probably something that there was a CD-ROM or something like that.
It was. That's how old it was. It was on CD-ROM because I remember it was.
Anyway, but we'll do the run through now.
Okay. So Rebecca reminded us that we need to make a motion to present those 3 policies
Okay.
to the board.
Do you need me for anything else, sir? I'm going to take leave if you.
We
guys
always
would like
need
me.
you, but we understand that
Thank you.
time is valuable.
Okay, I
Bye,
appreciate it.
Bob.
Thanks so much.
He just vanishes and everybody's face gets bigger. So let's do can I have a motion to bring the 3 policies? It is 3, isn't it? It's the travel.
It's
It's
2.
the-
Can you do them separately, please?
Do them separately?
Yes,
Okay. May I have a motion to bring the first aid policy to the board in October?
I make a motion to bring the first aid policy to the board in November, or is October?
October.
October, the 12th.
A second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstained? Motion passes. The second one is the travel policy. Probably has an official name. May I have a motion?
Make a motion, bring the travel policy to the board.
A second, please?
I second.
I'm supposed to say any discussion, but we already discussed. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion passes. We are relooking the art and exhibition policy because we need a procedure. And was there a third policy?
Not yet.
Okay, well, we're waiting for Bob to review the hazard policy, and we're waiting for finance to review the fund balance and the other financial policy.
The audience.
Sarah, can I just make one suggestion? If we're looking at the art policy and we're looking at the art reconsideration form, you should probably do the same for books as well, since it has the same language.
Okay, we can do that.
Because we're taking the language from the book reconsideration form, and that has a, are you filing this for a group?
Okay. We can do that. Is any
Scott, are you just? I'm sorry. Can I just interrupt for just 1 second? Scott, are you saying just in the book policy that verbiage?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because what happened was when we met last, we said, oh, we can do a form. It's pretty easy. We're just going to model it after the book reconsideration form, and that's pretty much what Melanie did. She did a really good job of just kind of like. So now that the lawyer has brought up that that's an issue, that we also have to look at that form, especially after it's been discussed in a meeting.
Okay.
No problem.
Would anybody be upset if we conclude the meeting, adjourn the meeting?
We have new business.
Yeah.
On the agenda.
But okay.
Public access to.
We could table it until our next meeting. I don't feel comfortable discussing some of the policies because I haven't really digested them and thought them through. But if people want to take a quick look at them, I'm open to that.
When,
I'm okay either way.
yeah. When are we gonna have another meeting? Next month or the end of the month or?
Beginning of the month, in time to get our materials to the board if we can? Or do you want it at the end of the month?
Sarah, are you recommending we have another meeting before October 12th? Because I can tell
No.
you kind of.
No, she's saying before the November,
Okay,
November meeting.
My-
Just in enough time that we can get, if we have any other issues, hammered out before the November meeting.
No
Correct,
problem.
Sarah?
Correct. I just wanted more time to really review the policies and think about them before we discuss them. Go on.
No, I was going to say, if that is the case, I would recommend the last week in October, because the first week in November, you're looking at November 1st, and the board packet needs to be completed by the 3rd.
Okay.
So that would be a really quick turnaround. So I would do the last week in October if at all possible.
Okay. Can we look at our first? Can I have a motion to table the new business?
I'll make a motion.
I second Bridget.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you. Abstain? I can count to 3. It's not that hard. Can we look at our calendars, please? Note to self, never do a meeting after being on vacation for a week and a half.
Yeah, you should have. Yeah, you scheduled it October 4th.
Maybe I did that before I realized I'd be in Maine without my computer.
Oh, okay. So that's fine.
How does October 26th Or do Tuesday, well, today's a Monday. Does Monday, the 25th work for you, ladies?
I have to check.
What about the Tuesday?
The 26th.
Yeah, the
26th.
26th Tuesday, 5:30.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Maybe we should make it 5:45.
At 6 o'clock. 6 on Tuesday, the 26th.
Okay.
All right, well, I have you.
Are you all in agreement that it's Tuesday, October 26th at 6 p.m. via Zoom?
Correct.
Yeah. And while I have you on the Zoom phone or whatever, this medium, are you available Thursday for the facilities meeting, Sarah, at 5:30?
The 7th?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Rebecca, I spoke to Brenda just a few minutes ago, so she's good with the 7th on 5:30.
5:30?
So the
Hold on.
7th audit and finance is meeting between 5 and 6.
Oh,
So it has to be
so 6.
before or after. That's why I presented that time frame for you.
Oh, 6:30.
It could be 6. It could be yeah, anytime after 6.
Okay.
Or 6:15, that would be fine, just to give a little buffer. Otherwise, 6:30 would be best.
So my only concern with that, Brigitte, is if we decide to go with option B, which is pay for the rest of the project with finance committee with capital fund, it would be better to have the meeting before finance, but I'm just putting it out there.
That's true.
Yeah, but
I'm just putting it out there. I'm not trying.
Thursday. On Thursday, I'm working from home, so I don't have that 45-minute or more drive back. So if you want to make it at 4:30 or
Again,
5.
again, there's a finance committee scheduled.
yeah, 5.
No, but that's what. So Becky, what we're trying to do is because
I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to make it before it. However, she's proposing the time that the finance committee is meeting.
okay, but a 4:30 meeting, it's a one agenda item. That gives us a
Just the
half
one
an hour.
agenda? That's it? Just one agenda?
It's one item on the agenda, I believe, unless I don't want to speak for the chair.
Okay.
I'll rephrase that. There's
No,
one-
because actually I wasn't going to have a meeting because we had sent out the information. It wasn't anything for us to really discuss. We were going to not have a meeting, just go over those items that Adam had sent out, and it wasn't any. So we're just doing one agenda item. That's fine because North Albany was still waiting delay for the door, so the entry door. So and then yeah.
The other thing we could do is we could just bring it. We could just say the facilities committee could not meet and wants to bring it to the full board.
We could do that too.
We could do that. I mean, it's one agenda item.
I mean, that one item. Unless we want to, how do you feel about that, Sarah? Do you like to discuss it prior to?
I leave that to you, Brigitte.
I don't know if that's what the president wanted.
Okay, well then I don't want to. Hey.
Well, the president wants us to meet. She wants us just to say we had a facility meeting. Okay, we met, and this is it.
So we'll meet from 4:30 to 4:45. How's that? Does that work for everyone?
I have to check with Brenda to see if she's available at 4:30.
Okay, what is,
Well, you only need 2 people, so if she can't make it, just to get this done, we can get this done. You only need
Right.
3.
Right, because she just text messaged me, so I told her 5:30, but I'll just get back to her and see if it's available at 4:30 so we can discuss it. So that everybody on the board will be happy. So,
So it's facilities on
right,
October 7th at
right.
maybe 4:30.
Tentatively 4:30, but I'll get back to Rebecca to let everyone know.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Motion.
May I have a motion to adjourn them? Oh, is there any public comment?
It's only once during committee.
I'm sorry? Oh, there's only one?
One public comment section during committee.
Maybe by the end of my term, I'll get this all understood. May I have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Desiree seconds. All in favor?
Aye,
Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you.
thank you.
And
Good
Scott,
night.
you're going to appreciate this. My
Thank you. Have a good
finance
night, everyone.
HR person.
All right.
Thank you,
Well, hold on,
ladies.
we should
All
probably
right,
stop.
Jerry, have a good night.
Good night. We should probably stop the recording.
Trying.
My
Thanks, Jim.
finance and accounting and